Selection for the test team is the easy bit. You have an awesome responsibility on the 8 individual forwards' shoulders. Awesome responsibility. This is your Everest, boys. Very few ever get a chance in rugby terms to get for Everest, the top of Everest. You have the chance today. Being picked is the easy bit. To win for a Lion, for the Lions in a test match, is the ultimate.
No, it was partly rehearsed because there was things on the blackboard or the whiteboard actually that there were key words and I could, trigger words if you like. And I had prepared during the week. I looked at what the press were saying about us and how they rubbished us, but that's typical South Africa. And so I used what the South Africans were saying about us for my own ends, if you think of it. And so that's how the speech came about. I'd never done a speech like that before, but everybody knew that, or everybody knows that Everest is the pinnacle of a climber's dream. And so it's the pinnacle of a rugby player's dream to win a test match for the Lions. But I've never used it again, never. But it was semi-prepared. I just had certain words and certain areas that I had to speak about. And one of the things that probably you did know, that I used the word individual performance, because I actually believe that a team effort is only good if the individual performances are good, not the other way around. I think that the best teams, actually, the best performance is always of the best players. And so that was the main theme. The idea, there was a net at the side that the players had to look to see as they passed, and that was the height that the forwards were to be in scrums and rucks and driving situations, tackles. And so there were props, if you like, props in the sense of the theatre that I used. And I think being a school teacher, sometimes you have to act a bit and you get out your comfort zone by acting the situation. There's a bit of acting there with changing the voice, being projected, a swear word here and there, well, usually there. And so I don't know how the players responded to it. Lawrence and Martin and Jerry are there, maybe others. But I would like to hear what they think, because they can be honest now after 20 odd years, if it didn't make any difference. There's one thing anyway, I don't know if they've made any difference to them, but my Christ, made a difference to me. I felt great after it.
I mean, it's one of the great speeches of all time, quite honestly. I think we all realise the enormity of the situation, of the challenge, really. And I think, to win as a rugby player, to win in South Africa is a pretty difficult thing to do. Obviously Fran and the Lions in 74, the great All Blacks only won a series in 96. So for us to follow in those footsteps, I think, Jim spelt it out very, very, very clearly. Some wonderful camera work there when you focus in on Martin Johnson, he's getting closer and closer and you still can't see his eyes. No matter how close you get to him, I mean, that is seriously scary. But look, I think, part of the challenge was finding that emotional connection amongst the entire group, and we were able to do that, really, and that was an amazing speech. We were ready to, it doesn't matter who we were playing against, we won that game, regardless. It's very, very special. What Jim should have said is you probably won't touch the ball for the entire game. You're just going to get smashed to pieces, but we're going to win. Don't worry.
Well, for me, it's one of those speeches that hits the buttons. We came out of that room and we knew that we were there for one team and one team only. We'd done a lot of work on team building before that, but we knew that we were up against a bigger pack, a stronger pack. And we had to perform, and we were in no doubt what we needed to do whenever we come out of there. At training sessions, Jim shouted and swore at us, and sometimes we didn't know what he was saying, but we knew what he meant. So it was every day we got motivated in different ways by Jim, and it was certainly a highlight in my career getting coached by him, and Ian as well, because they knew the Lions inside out, their history, had coached them many times before, and I think that was one of the key aspects of success of the tour.
I think with that speech, it's based entirely in truth. What he said was true. They didn't rate us. We were a very, very young set of forwards. A lot of the guys only played 1 or 2 years. Hilly, that was his first year of Test rugby. Tom Smith's first year of Test rugby. So we were relatively young, and they didn't rate us. They thought we were there for the taking. We knew that, and we were very, very nervous about the game. Everyone was anxious, and I think Jim just sort of acknowledged that, but also said, there's no standing down. That's just what you want to hear. There's no taking a backward step. And I don't think anyone would have, but sometimes, like Lawrence said, or Jim said, you only make those speeches very rarely, but they have to have an impact, and that had a massive impact. And thank God it's been recorded, for history, because it's very special.
Arrogance. Look across, boys. Look across. Look out there, arrogance. Fucking bond, right? On hearts, on minds. That's what we look for. Everything we share together. The pain, the pleasure. When you come off that field at the end of 80, we'll be. But we have won, and we know the pleasure, and we'll share together in 8, as 9, as 15. We do it. It's all in the one, in the heart, boys. You put it together in 8 forwards' hearts. You put it together, you get everything out. Everything you want. It's what you're looking for. It's what all we ever dream for. It's our day, our biggest day. We can make it.
I think just you're that close to the game, you just want it to start. You just want any distraction you can. So Keith might have not been talking any sense at all, but he was distracting me. I've got to be honest as well. It gave us a little bit of respite from Jenks probably puking up in the bin as well. It was a whole new experience for me. I'd never come across anything like that before. Look, the lads have all said it. It was a tour that was mentioned that we weren't given much hope of winning. We weren't even given much hope of winning the provincial games, let alone the test matches. So to find ourselves in a position where we were confident, we believed that we'd had some good results that were going into that test match, was all building confidence, but we knew that we were coming up against a completely different beast with the South African forwards in particular. Their backs weren't shy of the physicality as well, but as a pack, and Dorse was in with a pack at that particular point, but we knew that unless we fronted up and unless we stood our ground and unless we were prepared to take the battle to them, there wasn't going to be a game that day. We were potentially going to have to sacrifice a win, and no one was prepared to do that.
I got to tell you, nothing's more unsettling and upsetting. They wearing the jersey for the first test on this tour, and I spent the first 20 minutes flicking bits of Neil Jenkins' vomit off my jersey as I was changing next to him. Not a pleasant experience, let me tell you. I was still recovering from the physical battering that Jim Telfer's drills had given us. Jerry and I had never willingly entered a ruck in our lives, and he was trying to teach us how to ruck for the first 2 weeks of the tour.
Yeah, probably as nervous as Jenks was. I think I stayed away from that group of forwards. I think it was unusual to have a 5 o'clock kickoff. I felt the whole day was a huge wait until the game. So yeah, as Hilly says, it's distractions you need in the changing room. I think nowadays teams don't do that. They come in, they're much more relaxed. So it was a bit of a throwback to the amateur days of really getting psyched up in a changing room. That's what we're all brought up with in our clubs and international at the time. But today's changing rooms are very different.
I remember after the game, that changing room was sort of split into 2 areas, and the forwards had one and the backs had the other. I remember Jerry saying to me when Keith was giving that speech, and I think Duncan might tell us, I think you digitally edited a lot of the F words out. I think Keith had 15 in 45 seconds, didn't he? His swearing was amazing.
That was, I mean, look, it was, I I mean, to be in that changing room was surprising, and kind of like emotional as well. It wasn't just, you know, that there was a lot of other things that was going on. There was a lot of silence as well, and that was, if I remember rightly, that was literally just before you guys walked out. But there was also a lot of silence. There was a lot of guys sort of reflecting, and kind of, we were stuck in a corner with a camera trying to be unobtrusive, which, you know, is difficult for me. And a sound man, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but I think we kind of managed it. But the editing kind of side of it, I think Fred's got quite a good story on Keith's swearing as it goes along. What was that?
Yeah, well, Jono, you were right that, yeah, in that clip, I think, Keith, you had, yeah, about 14 or 15 F-bombs in about 35 seconds. It was, and I do remember we phoned you up and played you the clip down the phone, and you sounded a little bit alarmed, and you kind of said, well, boys, maybe you should take some of that out because I might have to open up a supermarket or something at some point. And so then we went back and we sort of edited it out. And then we phoned you up and played it back to you. And you basically just went, no, that doesn't sound like me. Put it all back in. So then we did. But yeah, I mean, the swearing is all kind of part of it, isn't it? It just sort of, that's the way it is.
It is. I think it is a fair, but I was scared in those few minutes beforehand. That's what it was. It's funny. I was just listening to Jim talking about it, and he got us at a perfect emotional pitch a couple of hours before the game. This is 10 minutes before the game, or 5 minutes before we go out. And I think, look, there's a few of the Irish guys here. We'd been on losing teams for a long time with Ireland, and suddenly get a chance to play against a team like South Africa, and keep having Jim stuff ringing in your ears, and you just don't want to leave anything inside in the changing room. And it was just to try and get to an emotional pitch. I absolutely, look, I know I lost it. And I also know that when I look back, as I stepped away from it, the only person I could see was Guscott, roaring, laughing, as he is now, laughing at me, saying, for God's sake, these guys are just psycho. And has laughed at me ever since.
I think it's amazing. I mean, at that time, sat in that changing room and listening to stuff, the only bit I could understand were the rest was at such a height and such a pitch. It literally, I felt sorry for the South Africans, really, who had to face not just Woody, but the rest of the guys up front. And again, listening to the speech of Jim, I mean, us as backs, we weren't lucky enough to be part of that. But every time I hear it, every time I hear people talk about it, it's incredibly special. And that changing room was, I had to work incredibly hard not to laugh out loud, because I just thought it. Guys have talked about being relaxed. I mean, that totally chilled me out. It was a lovely environment there in Cape Town. The stadium's old, it's brilliant. It's kind of wooden inside, the change rooms, everything's beautiful there. It's historic. And then to hear Woody go off like that was just, the icing on the cake and set us on our way. I love it, absolutely love it.